Welcome to Through a Glass Dark Radio with Sean Patrick Hazlett. And I want to say that you're listening to United Public Radio. Intro music was Mark of the Doomslayer by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And today I have one of my most popular guests who has one of the most intriguing takes on the UFO phenomena. And I also want to just give a warning to folks who watch a lot of Nathaniel Gillis interviews. A lot of this is, if you watch my channel Through a Glass Darkly, a lot of this is going to tread ground we've been before, but I want Nathan to reach a much broader audience, and because I think his theories and ideas are extremely interesting. So without further ado, I'm just going to give folks a brief background of Nathaniel Gillis. He's a religious demonologist and author. After living in a haunted house, Nathaniel spent 20 years researching what it was he encountered. Nathaniel is the founder of preternatural epiphenomenal philosophy. He has started to redefine the nature of haunting phenomena, ghosts, and high strangeness. He's often quoted for his concept of the demonic. Quote, "The reason they are playing by different rules is because they are playing a different game." Nathaniel, welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me, sir. It's great to be back with you.
Yeah, it's just you're just coming back. I mean, not just coming back, but you were in, I think, Manchester about a
hmm
month ago, and you had a kind of
Yes,
a great
sir.
experience. You got to make all the grades. So let's just start with
I
that real
did.
quick. Like how did that go? What
hmm
what high level? What did you take back with you? And all that
Oh
good
my
stuff.
God. What a gift. What a gift, my friend. It was amazing. It was the Awakening Mini Expo put on. Hey, Miss Tessa, real quick. Tessa, if you don't follow me on Instagram, you need to. That way you can keep up with my research. But yeah, so I was invited by Steve Mera and Zohar Entertainment to present along with Dr. Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mera himself, Paul St. Clair, the Kinsella brothers, and then, of course, Mark Awley. And just to me, just personally, these, I believe, are the leading researchers on the planet just because of what I know in the field and the work I'm doing and what I know of them as researchers. But thankfully, it was an 8.5 hour flight and I made it safely. And I got to hug their necks, shake hands with them, pick their brains, and at the very final event, present alongside of them. And thank you. And so it was an absolute dream come true. And I'm thankful to know them.
All right, my friend. All right, so for folks who just fell off the turnip truck and don't know anything about your research,
Mhm.
UFOs, are they ETs from outer space? Are they
Mhm.
transdimensional? Are they something else? Are they both? What are they?
I think that we're still lacking the correct vocabulary needed to articulate what they are. That's pretty much what I've been doing as of late is, trying to figure out the right words I need. I mean, in terms of what model am I operating off of currently, it's a singular intelligence that is interdimensional or whatever interdimensional is to come in and out of existence at will, materialize to the touch, then disappear into a vapor. Whatever we're dealing with can be temporarily embodied and then in a fleeting moment just disappear into the darkness. So, like I said, I think we're still learning a new vocabulary. But in terms of the model, I believe the closest model is interdimensional.
And how did you get involved in this study?
Well, I first encountered this intelligence in my youth. My parents were looking to purchase a new house. We moved into the house, and I encountered what appeared at first to be a little girl hiding
Mm-hmm.
underneath my bed or a bed. But yeah, so it turns out it was not a little girl at all. It was just an entity masquerading as something it knew I would want to be friends with. And so when I actually moved into the house, that entity mutated into something much darker than what it first appeared as. And so then I'm going to bed at night. It's silent, everybody's sleeping. And then I would hear the heavy footfall of this being as it was displacing its weight on our wooden floors. And so during that time, in my time in that house, rather, I encountered virtually, I mean, about 75% of the known paranormal activity, even what's called direct voice phenomenon, where I would be sitting laying in my bed essentially, and I would hear a full blown conversation occurring above my head. And so it was at that moment that I determined it's always with me, even though I could not see it. It was present with, but absent from. And so I made a decision, a cognitive decision. Do I run away? Do I, just shut down emotionally and physically, stop eating and waste away, or do I learn from its presence? And do I create a coping mechanism around myself so as if I'm when it's around me, when it's in my proximity, I'm learning from it just as much as it's learning from me. And so that was kind of instrumental in getting me to where I am in the field.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So this is not directly related, but I think you might appreciate
Mm,
this analogy. And I don't know if you knew this, but I'm an old cavalry officer. And
okay.
what they train us to do is if you are ambushed, you are to assault into the ambush. And that's
Very
effectively
good.
what you're doing. I mean, you're doing it in a
Right.
much more methodical manner. You're much more careful, but you're
Mhm.
not freaking out and moving away from it. You're
Correct.
actually fighting into it. And thank you for that, because the more people who have the courage to do these things, the faster we'll have
Mhm.
a bead on whatever the heck this is. Okay,
I
so
agree. I
yeah, go
agree.
ahead.
Well, the cognitive interface it employed was, I mean, it was more than what met my eyes, I should say. And so when at first blush, I look back and I think, okay, it appeared as a little girl, and then it was just trying to gain my trust. And yet, again, this is one of the coping mechanisms. And one of the insights I gathered from being around it was that it wasn't just the cognitive interface that it was employing, it was the rules that I was supposed to apply. Now we're going to get into some serious stuff. The rules that I was supposed to apply to that cognitive interface. And that was the whole purpose of it, right? What rules would it be applied to a little girl? Okay, it's a little girl. It'll behave like a little girl. It'll do little girl things. Therefore, I should trust it. I should obey it, and I should form some kind of bond with it. And so, as the phenomenon again evolved according to my awareness of it in that house, the more I started learning, even as a young boy, that there's something wrong here. Not just with the haunting itself, but the way this intelligence was it's almost like it had a learning matrix to it, gaining my trust and then evolving along with me as I matured. That was pretty much the greatest revelation. I mean, it pushed me, it thrust me into to areas of this intelligence that I'm just now starting to understand.
All right. Now, when you said you heard voices talking over your head, do you recall what
Mhm.
they were saying?
They were close enough for me to hear them, but far enough away that I could never understand what they were saying ever, which is weird in of itself. So they wanted me to know they were present, but not understand exactly what they were saying to each other. There have been couple of times rather, since then, I've experienced that same phenomenon, and we can get into those case studies. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
strange. It really is.
Yeah. Let's, because I believe there's another case where you could hear what they were saying, and it was almost
Oh,
as if
yes,
they
we
were
get to that too.
conspiring. Yeah, let's talk that
Absolutely.
one.
Wow, I forgot about that. Yes, sir. So
Yeah, I didn't
that
forget about
was
that one. That one's
I did,
spooky
yeah.
as hell.
It is. And so I have good friends in Rhode Island. They are with Dark Horse Paranormal, Chris and
Hmm.
Kristen. They're like family to me. But this is a few years back when I started getting into the entities I consider as molters or the molters. And I was deep in the darkness, I should say, when we were on a show just like this. We were in the green room, I guess, before we went
Hmm.
live. And Kristen, we first of all we started having like weird things happening with the audio and the video. Things were just weird. And so Kristen had put her headphones on rather, and we're just kind of getting situated. We're about to go live. And Kristen's testimony was that before they pushed record, and before they pushed to go live, in one headphone that Kristen was wearing, one side, an entity spoke something only in one headphone. And then on the other side, the other headphone, another entity answered it. And then for like 5 to 10 seconds, they began conversing, talking to each other. One entity told the other, wait until we go live or wait until they can hear us. And then we went into the show. So, yeah, so I found that to be the truth. I mean, I don't know. I know you talked about something before the show where when you get to a point in the research, when you get too close to the veil and you could see into the darkness, they will push back. And that was one of those times. They did not want me to talk about the research.
Now that reminds me of a Steve Mera interview that I did. When you met
Hmm.
with Steve Mera, did he say anything to you about when they were trying to push a little bit too deep into Sumerian slash Babylonian demonology?
Babylonian, yeah, dogman and demonology. Yes, yes, he told that story. Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's alarming because within these different fields of research, I have found, and others have found also, that you can research ufology and receive no pushback whatsoever. You
Mm-hmm,
can research
mm-hmm,
parapsychology, right? No pushback. But when you start touching on that vein of demonology, especially within antiquity, that's when the phenomenon roars its face and begins to bark. And so, absolutely, he and Barry Fitzgerald also, they both encountered something. As a matter of fact, it was they were both experiencing phenomena at the same time, and then one got a hold of the other, and they confirmed we're on the trail of something. So that is, again, the phenomenon wants to be in control. It does not want us to truly understand its source or its nature. And I think that speaks to what we're really dealing with.
All right, I'm gonna. You've been very good at ignoring the comments. That's my job.
Mhm.
But this is an interesting question. This is one I want
Yeah.
to. Do you have any
Well,
thoughts on Sumerian gods?
yes. Akkadian, Sumerian, Ugaritic. What we're dealing with essentially, if you combine all the traditions within Mesopotamian texts, ritual bowls in the Levant, what you're going to realize is that something was hiding in the darkness, was pregnant. The darkness itself was pregnant with an intelligence that was seeking to become incarnate. And whatever we're dealing with is kind of a hybridization between overlords, the disincarnate, and what we would consider, not in the evangelical sense, but the deceased, something or someone that had died or dispossessed. And we'll get into this stuff too. And this is kind of vague and nebulous, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the evolution of consciousness. Some evolved and some devolved. And so when you're dealing with Sumerian gods, these beings first presented themselves as the deceased. Build me altars, and then I will give you insights into the afterlife. And so that's when we get into, and I can go down this, but that's essentially, yes, that's what we're talking about. But it was that the first, I guess, the erection of the first altars themselves were because the Sumerian gods, whoever they are, were trying to become incarnate once more.
You said the magic word, man. I'm going to ask you a
Well,
crazy question I haven't asked anyone yet, so you
okay.
can pass if you want. Okay, there was a CBS News report. Okay, CBS
Mhm.
News in recent weeks. It was televised, and in Israel they are building that you said the magic word an altar,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and they acquired these red heifers from Texas, from
Hmm.
Texas evangelicals, whatever you want to call it, and there is some sort of um, either
The
Hebrew
red heifer
belief.
ritual. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to go down a blind alley. But if this has something to do with all this stuff, what's your interpretation? But you talk. You know what I'm talking about, like that
Oh,
CBS
absolutely,
report.
100%. Yes, sir. So this gets back into some of the ancient rites, and again, this is all splintered. So I'd have to literally do a show with you and start from the basic foundation and then bleed into these concepts. But essentially, in antiquity, there was a splintering of beings. Number one, they were called the Rephaim. or the Rephaites, and essentially they were a cult of deceased ghosts and kings. These were beings that began demanding sacrifices. Feed me. So you would have the direction of altars by family members, and then essentially they would go underneath an open sky and they would present burnt sacrifices. They would perform prayers, incantations, rituals designed not just to please that descendant or that disincarnate being, ancestor, but hoping that that entity would give them some form of knowledge from that netherworld that they could employ in this dimension. And it was during those rituals that whatever these beings are, not what they claim to be, but whatever they are, begin to demonstrate technology. Like I said before, the ritual of terraphine, which was one of the ways they would self replicate their species, if I may. Number one, it was through the implantation of consciousness. So
Hmm.
we have the altars. Usually they were called earthen altars made from stones that were uncut by human hands. They were built underneath the cosmology of stars, open sky, and then they were built at what were called portals that led to the underworld. What that really means in today's vernacular is that these people were building altars within the proximity of paranormal phenomena. And in doing that, that intelligence that was trying to become incarnate again, it began to give them technology. The first implementation of technology was the ritual of terraphine. It's going to be new for some people and old for others. So,
Hmm.
anyways, what that meant was that the practitioner, usually it's called head magic. It's usually within necromancy, but that practitioner would go out and he would take a small piece of metal and carve the name of that deity, that unclean spirit, that demon, if you would, that Rephaim, the ghost god, carve the name of that entity into that piece of metal, and then go find a host for that intelligence to inhabit. Upon finding that individual,
Hmm.
dead or alive, would then implant that piece of metal into that body. And the memory that had merged with that meta material, if you will, would then step into that biological avatar. And that is the origin of possession. Now that intelligence has self replicated its own species. Now, again, the emergence of the altar led to the emergence of the implant. And then we have the beginning of dream demonology. Now we have the incubi legend, the succubi, where beings are literally stepping into nightmares and impregnating women. Now,
Hmm.
again, that is the second way they self replicate. So they self replicate primarily, at least in my research, by implantation and impregnation. And then later on in antiquity, at least we have them both present, the implantation of consciousness and the impregnation with the fetus in the same case studies. So that's essentially what we're dealing with.
When you say implantation through pregnancy, do you mean
Mhm.
physical pregnancy, or the woman that already has a fetus and there is some
Mm-mm.
method of implantation through dream work in some
So it's
sense?
both. It's both. Now, again, when you're dealing with the incubi cases, that is essentially dealing with the physical nature of the fetus, where women were thinking that it's just a dream, no big deal. And they wake up the next morning and they have ligature marks on their hands and wrists that
Hmm.
directly correlate with what they thought was just a dream. We see this often in the UFO abduction phenomenon. In antiquity, we just knew them as dream demons because upon their arrival, they would induce their victims into dreamlike states where they don't know if this is reality or if it's not. And so, usually, at least the way the phenomenon mutated, it began with a fetus, right? That was the original hybrid. That's what we know in demonology. And
Hmm.
at first blush, we were like, okay, what's the purpose of this? Right? I mean, in the Apocrypha of John, again, I'm going back to some of my older work, but I have to. It talks about how they were creating bodies in the image of their own apparition. Again, trying to become incarnate, self replicating. It wasn't until the 16th century in the debug phenomenon that we saw for the first time the fruition. of the evolution of this intelligence
Mm-hmm.
when simultaneously we had consciousness of an entity in the female and we had them pregnant with a fetus, to the point where the exorcists and physicians put their thumbs on the wrists of these experiencers, felt two heartbeats in the same body, two pulses in the same body. And so what we need to realize is that possession to us is a form of pregnancy to them. And wouldn't you know that upon examination, when the phenomenon removed the consciousness, it also removed the fetus at the same time. All symptoms ceased, women went back to normal. So what are we dealing with here? Something sinister. And I think, and especially I can tell you this, within the field of ufology, I've heard researchers kind of discount that phenomenon. Or even go, I saw one guy literally tell somebody on Facebook, well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but you need to go channel Seth. And so the reason they're not understanding this way of self-replication is because, again, in order to study the tree, you don't just study the branches, you have to study the roots. And those are the
Mm-hmm.
two primary ways this species is self-replicating.
And so this red heifer phenomena is somehow
Mhm.
related to potentially some entity that's trying to reproduce, invoke itself, become a
Mhm.
reality, come through a portal, etc. But I mean, how is it? How can a religion? Because who's behind it in terms of the it's just some subsect of of Israelis who are
Right.
along with some American Christians who have something to say about this red heifer uh, you know prophecy or whatever.
Right.
There's something related to ushering in end times, the Antichrist, all this stuff. Like what do you
Correct.
make
Well,
of all that?
your Sanhedrin, which is who these individuals are, according to their eschatology, their study of future prophetic events, they
Mm-hmm.
believe that we are on the very edge of the return of their Messiah. And so that's why they're starting to implement these rituals. So they've been looking for a spotless red heifer for a long time. And after collecting them, now they're going to start employing these sacrifices. I think more than anything, and I'm still trying to figure out what we're dealing with here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but to answer your question, absolutely, that's what they're trying to do. They feel that we're at the end of days, and that as soon as they start implementing these rituals once again, that will hasten the return of what they consider to be the Mashiach or the Messiah.
And what do you make of it? Because based I think on
Hmm.
your research, these entities, this phenomena, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
is parasitic in some sense. So
Oh
destroying
yeah, we
its
can get to that.
let's talk about that. But destroying its hosts, like
Hmm.
there's probably not an incentive for whatever this is to wipe out humanity because it wouldn't have some means of replication. So let's talk about the
Correct.
parasitic nature, and then if you could kind of wing your
Amazing.
way into an answer to that question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So it was upon my examination of these case studies that I realized that out of all the models presented about this intelligence, there was only one that possessed all of the nuances of their pathology, and that was the parasitic model. And
Mm-hmm.
within the parasitic model, specifically within biology, we're dealing with an organism in a sense. And this organism creates a symbiotic relationship with its future host. Now, we first saw that again when these beings were courting the human conditions of both their incubi victims and of the occult practitioners, literally courting the human conditions. But during these cognitive interfaces, just like the one employed on me when I was a child, there is this symbiotic relationship the phenomenon tries to create with the experiencer. And so within the parasitic model, especially within the context of the incubi phenomenon, absolutely. The reason these beings were appearing to women in the images of their lovers, which I've had cases like that myself, not just their lovers, but their husbands, deceased husbands, is because they're trying to create that symbiotic relationship.
Hmm.
Now, what that means, this is fascinating too. What that means is the mask they wear is often made of memories within the mind of the experiencer, belief systems held within the mind of the experiencer. And so, a lot of times, when that experiencer is interfacing with this intelligence, it's so hard to ignore the mask because the mask is made of pieces of that individual's mind. And so, in a sense, it is me, but it's not. It's coming from me. And I don't want to get too deep with this, but that's why it's so easy to fall into the trap of believing them. And so, within the parasitic model, moving right along, at a certain point through symbiosis, the intelligence that's trying to self replicate, it co evolves, coexists, and it adapts to the awareness of the potential host. Okay? Making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as it's doing this, as it changes, it's monitoring that future host. How are you reacting? How are you evolving according to my presence, my coexistence? And this is called symbiosis. And then when all of these factors, all of these stages are reached, then that intelligence changes into the parasitic entity. I got to get some more water. This is going to blow your mind. It's at that moment that the intelligence looks back at every stage, all of the knowledge it has amassed, co-evolving with you, coexisting with you, adapting to you, takes all of that, constructs something, and approaches the future host. I'm your deceased lover. That's nuts. Now, we've seen that in biology, but only through the lens of like 1,000 years or so. But what we're talking about can do that as it's staring into the eyes of the experiencer, mapping everything and anything, and then navigating various senses. And then by the time everything is said and done, now that entity is stepping into the body of that host. Now, in times past, the model that we were working off of was that the hybrid, or the host itself rather, was the experiencer. But that model's wrong. Might I suggest, according to the behavioral patterns and the pattern confirming evidence, that the host is not the experiencer. The host is the fetus they're inseminating them with. And so, again, symbiosis usually in history, especially within biology, it occurred through thousands of years.
Hmm.
One species evolves according to the evolution of another. Now we're looking at this within, oh my God, boom, it happens. Now I know which cognitive interface to employ the next time I approach you. And so, what we're trying to do now, my colleagues and I are trying to see through that mask because, hands down, here's where I'm at. There's a lot more going on than what meets the eye. With these masks, there are rules. It's not just I'm appearing to you as so and so. No, I'm appearing to you as this individual or this entity because there are rules that are accompanying that incarnation. And I'm not just hiding behind the mask, I'm hiding behind the rules you think I play by. And so the proto intelligence is present. I don't want to, me, man.
Now, does it play by its own rules? Like, does it have any
Yes,
rules?
it does.
And
Now,
are those
mhm,
rules ever tripped up or exposed? Like, in other words, are there mistakes that are made that seem obvious and hilarious? Not hilarious. That's a terrible way to put it, but just obvious. Like how could something this advanced or this
mhm.
cunning make that sort of mistake? But is that associated with the rules, or is that associated with their incomplete understanding of us?
Well, again, with the facades that they masquerade behind. Okay, again, this is old research, but for those who are just now hearing me, and for those who've heard me before, just bear with me. Hopefully, I can add more insight into this because it's really deep. But I had a case study with an individual who was being taken in her youth, and it first manifested according again to her worldview, her knowledge about life, and all that, especially imagery, specifically imagery, and manifested as her favorite cartoon. And so, as a child, right, it manifests because number one, okay, I want to gain your trust, but I'm grooming. Literally, that's what it was doing, grooming her human condition, hoping that because of the cognitive interface that it's employing, that she will believe it plays by those rules. It can't harm me. It's Archie. Archie would never do that. Archie's going to do what Archie does. And it sounds really simple, but it's not. It's dark. And so she said that they took her, they did experiments, but as she matured, years went by, like 2 or 3 years, she stopped watching these cartoons. She stopped reading Archie comic books. And then one night, that same energy filled the room, and suddenly here comes the same cognitive interface. She says, but now I'm this tall, and the being is this tall. And this is going to blow your mind, but again, this is why I do not believe in the ET hypothesis, and I believe it's something far darker and more sinister. It's because of this. She said, as I'm looking at this entity, I'm realizing, okay, it has not matured along with me. And we'll get deeper into this in a second, which will hopefully add more value to your pilgrimage. It had not evolved according to her evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so now she's looking at an old program that it was trying to work on her. That's when she said, to her utter astonishment, the entity's eyes is trying to stare into her eyes, but the entity's eyes were moving back and forth like this. And she said, Nathaniel, she said, you're the only researcher I know that would believe me. I said, what you got? She said, it was
Mm-hmm.
measuring my belief in the image.
Interesting. So it's like something is trying to focus a picture, or
Correct.
get it crisper, or get it just in a different type of
Yeah,
resolution, kind of like a reality filter of some sort that you're trying to go through. And
indeed. And it's as if I may, it's as if, because I don't want to lose this thought, it's as if by believing in the image, by believing in the mask, you are empowering the proto intelligence that's wearing it. This is why I tell you what, my friend, when people suggest that these beings are flying light years to come into our world, respond to incantations from antiquity, just to show up and measure our belief, no. So there's something deeper going on, but it was strange. That really changed my perception. Okay, yeah, there's much more going on here than just wearing a mask.
you want me to really freak you out? Have
Go
you
for it,
seen
brother.
the quote unquote? Look, I don't know where this came from. This came from a friend who's like a diehard pre-Vatican II Catholic sent me
Okay.
to this, but apparently there's something called the new theology, quote unquote, new theology that the
Hmm.
Vatican is considering, and
Okay.
it, it's again, I don't know how true this is. I don't know if they're trying to float it, but it seems like something directly out of this. Right?
Right.
They talk about reincarnations. They talk,
There we
which is
go.
not a
No, it's
Catholic
not.
thing.
And Malachi
Um,
Martin would roll over in his grave.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They talk about there's an element of panpsychism, which is consciousness in everything, right?
Hmm.
From the smallest atom to the biggest star. It, 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 it seems very much like something that the Gateway kind of document that the CIA
Hmm.
put together. It's
Hmm.
very consistent with that. I don't want to read it on the radio because it's kind of long,
Too
and
too dark.
well, it's not. I mean, it depends on what lens you're looking through, right? If you're
Okay.
like the light and love kind of unicorn farts kind of ET
Mm.
person, it's very positive and affirming.
Hmm.
If and again, I'm just using extremes, and I would say on the dark side, yours is not the most extreme, but it's on the darker aspect of the spectrum. if you read it, you would be horrified, right? It's kind of
Right.
in the eye of the beholder because anyway, there's that. There's a lot of stuff that's in flux, and it feels if you put like a national security filter over it, it feels
Hmm.
like a like an intelligence community Vatican kind of collaboration.
Hmm.
There's just a lot of aspects to it, and like I
Send it
said,
to
I'll
me,
share it
brother.
with you.
Send it to me.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would love
I'll
to
share it
read
with you
that.
afterwards. You got to read through the Italian first. You got to skip to there's a whole section in Italian, and then it just goes straight to English.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I'll tell you what, real quick, because we're going to get in, I know we have like another hour or so, but, my first, I guess, my first clue as to this self replication of species was given to me in the book called The Golden Bow, written by James Frazier. And he talks about how the ancient warriors, which is allegedly what these replicants was supposed to be, one of them, one species, they had learned to dispossess their bodies. If they were mortally wounded, they would dispossess their bodies and implant their consciousness by virtue of possession into someone else or something else. And so I
mhm,
started looking at this self replication of species, and I found a ritual that would kind of sum up everything demonology has given us. Okay, you ready?
mhm,
Okay, it's called the Ultimate Black Mass. And we're going to go through various characteristics just this one ritual has with what we're considering to be incubi, succubi,
mhm.
and dream demons, pregnancy, possession, all of it. And I swore on my Instagram that I wouldn't talk about this, but since we're covering with new listeners, this is called the Ultimate Black Mass. When a sorcerer reaches the end of his life, and he knows it's very near by reason that he is losing his potency, or now we're dealing with the disability of
Hmm.
being without being a being, and so he's facing that. He seeks a young woman, what? Who must not be more than 17 years of age. He makes her pregnant. There's pregnancy. Now he's
Hmm.
the incubus, and he watches until she has been with child at least 2 months. Then he takes her to a place that he's consecrated, lays her on a bed covered with his altar sheet. He drugs her. Hmm. He puts her into a deep sleep, dream demon. Okay. He begins, okay, uttering and incanting here. The girl falls asleep. He then speaks over the unborn child. Move over, move over. You are a part of me. There's symbiosis. I am more powerful. This is dark, by the way. This is the depth of darkness we're looking at. Get out of my body. I know if you don't have me back, forgive me. I'm just getting into this real quick.
Wait. He says to the girl, "Get out of my body."
No, he says to the fetus, my friend. This will. I'm telling you again. This is nuts. But just go with me for a fleeting moment. I
Hmm.
am more powerful than your body. Your body belongs to me. Get out of my body. I am in thee. Thou art me. I merge in thy body. O weak spirit, get out. You will make room for my spirit. I am more powerful than thee, little one. Ladies and gentlemen, let me go through just the characteristics. Okay, we've got the seed, which Father Sinistrari collected on his victims. So did Montague Summers. Matter of fact, so do UFO abductees have that.
When you say seed, what do you mean
Semen,
specifically? Okay, all right.
excretions, secretions.
Okay.
We have the hybrid. We have the hybrid. We have the host. We have the dream demon, inducing her into the dream state or into sleep. She's sleeping, the victim's sleeping. We have possession, where he possesses the fetus. We have pregnancy. We have ritual magic. Okay? We have the incubus. All of that within one ritual, my friend. Now, this would explain, and people are going to be like, they're probably killing me in the comments here or in the chat, but this is just another example where this is called occult transference. This would make sense as to why in the Apocrypha of John it said they were making bodies in the images of their apparitions.
That black mass, was that thelema? Was that a thelemite?
Well, it was performed by Crowley, yes.
It's a
Now,
thelemite ritual. It sounds
correct.
like.
So this is, if I may, this is not just, it goes by various names. Matter of fact, this is another one's called the red rite. Let me say this. This red rite, the rite can only be performed by male sorcerers and is performed when his body has become aged or damaged. The adept takes a young, strong female, forms a powerful love bond, symbiosis, symbiotic relationship evolving according to her awareness. He impregnates her, and then during the early stages of the pregnancy, within the first 2 months, he ends his existence. In other words, he dispossesses his body. And then, coupled with the effects of the love bond with the mother, he possesses the fetus inside of her. Now, the only reason I'm paying, obviously, the characteristics this shares with dream demonology, incubi research, all that. But this is a ritual that was employed by people who were also contacting extraterrestrials by virtue of Ouija boards. So there's something wrong here, if I may say that, because it's not like, okay, this was discovered in some, I don't know, back alley. No, the same people, practitioners, Crowley, Parsons, all these people, these practitioners, all of them, yeah, they're contacting NHIs through Ouija boards and building altars, also using ritual magic, hoping to replicate their own bodies and their own consciousness.
Here's another creepy fact that no one really has noticed, I think, until I noticed it.
Mhm.
So allegedly, well, I'll just tell you my source. There's a book called "The Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts." Okay,
Yes, that's in my
according to
queue. I've got
that
to buy
book,
that.
yeah, it's. I by the way, I interviewed Alan Greenfield last week, so
Awesome. I'll have to
we'll
watch it.
get to
That's one of
that.
the things I have on my playlist, buddy.
Yeah. So in that book, there is it says it in the book. Alan Greenfield said that's not necessarily when he started writing it, but in the book it says it. Okay, so
Hmm.
he, I think, received some message or automatic writing based on this entity called IWAS. Okay,
Correct.
AIWASS. Okay, he got his first message, or he started writing the book on April 8th, 1904.
Hmm.
See where
Hmm.
I'm going with this?
I'm following you, brother. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So on April 8th, there's going to be a solar eclipse this year.
Hmm.
That's the
Right.
120th anniversary of that
There we
event.
go.
So it's probably nothing, but I'm the guy that
It's,
notices weird things
I
like
think
that.
it's something. Yeah, yeah. It's not an accident, my friend. Not an accident. But
Okay,
wow.
go ahead.
Well, again, this is a self-replication of species. But guys, look, when we're dealing with the first contactees, okay, they were a lot like the practitioners in antiquity. I mean, these individuals, George Hunt Williamson, was channeling non-human intelligences till multiple voices were coming out of his body. Where have we heard that before? Okay. I mean, George Adamski upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. These individuals, okay, one, I think it was George Adamski, but yeah, performing ritual magic, hoping to contact aliens and spaceships. Again, our model is wrong. Our model is wrong. Albert Bender was the one who he hand built an altar in his attic. Where did we hear that first? Hmm. Not in MUFON, ladies and gentlemen. We have,
Mm-hmm.
again, and forgive me, I know I'm getting passionate here, but let's just put it where it's at. If the model's wrong, then our timeline for disclosure is equally incorrect. Because if we, and I said this in the awakening, I'll just give you a little hint of that. But I told them essentially, guys, look, they didn't seed us with technology. That was the secondary byproduct of the original primordial seeding, which was ritual magic. And it was at that point when the darkness that was pregnant to become incarnate began to move into practitioners and demonstrate pathologies of behavioral patterns that we're just now looking back at and saying, okay, what is going on here? Which would also suggest, I guess I should say, that that disclosure is not going to happen. We're looking at, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Disclosure is not, okay, knock 3 times and I'll give you your favorite technology. Mm-mm.
Right.
Disclosure happened in antiquity when the primordial man extinguished his campfire, repaired himself to his personal quarters, and out of nowhere, he begins to get a download. I want you to go carve my name into a piece of metal. What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shepherds, okay, herdsmen. Yeah, put that fire out. I want to talk to you. Who is that? What is that? It's the darkness wanting to become incarnate. And so that is when we have these manifestations occur. So if you were looking at the intelligence as it's incarnating, no, not at all. It's not nuts and bolts alone. Matter of fact, nuts and bolts may just be something it's giving to us because we think that's what it's all about. When truthfully, again, disclosure occurred when we built our first altars. And that's my little rant. I can go anywhere you want me to go now.
Yeah, just let me remind the audience. So, for folks who are just joining us, you are listening to Through a Glass Darkly Radio with Sean Patrick Hazlett on United Public Radio. I'm here with Nathaniel J. Gillis, and we are talking about UFOs. Are they ETs or demons?
Mm. Yeah. So whatever we're dealing with, again, it's evolving according to our awareness of it. And dare I say, after looking at especially these UFO abduction accounts, um, it's almost like they're creating involuntary initiations
Mm-hmm.
where, right, look at this symbol and see what you can do with it. Where did we first hear that? Not in mathematics. We first heard of that in practitioners. Here's my symbol. Matter of
Yeah,
fact, follow. Good.
I got a weird story for you, and I'm hoping. Well, let me ask you another question so I can soften the
Okay.
blow.
Okay.
Although I think I've asked you this question before, or not. All right, we're talking kind of something that has demonic characteristics. You're not necessarily saying it's demons. You're saying this the phenomena is
Right.
operating like what we would call demons in antiquity. What about angels? Where do they fit in to all this stuff? Is it the
Well,
same phenomenon, or is it
s-
a positive side?
well,
What is it?
this is actually fascinating too. I wish we still have another hour, right?
Absolutely.
Oh man, we're gonna have a blast, brother. So
Yeah, I'm gonna
check
tell you.
this
I'm gonna
out.
tell you a really weird story,
Okay.
but I want you to answer this first because there might be some. We talked a little bit about this. You're gonna hear a different story that you heard pre-call, but
Pre-show. Okay.
it's yeah, it's weird. But go ahead.
Well, so the angel or fallen angel hypothesis essentially it's generated in Genesis chapter 6, and that's where most of the evangelical, or at least Western researchers end. Sons of God saw the daughters of men. The problem is in academia, here's a fancy term. That phrase, sons of God, when it was first employed, is a hopax legomenon. In other words, when the author pinned that phrase together, he was assuming you and I, Sean, knew what he was talking about.
Right.
In other words, I don't have to explain it. Not only that, but it's called a once word, or a word that's only employed in that text one time. And then from that moment on, scholars of the ancient Near East, the only thing they can do is look at other mentions of that sons of God. Not that they have the same combination of letters. It's just sons of God. But what they have to do, and the only thing they can do, Sean, is look back retrospectively, say, okay, that must be who the sons of God in Genesis 6 were. So, with that understood, now we move into the legend of the fallen angel. Okay, what is fallen about an angel? And what is
Mm-hmm.
angelic about the fallen? Matter of fact, those two terms are not in the Holy Writ together at all. So then we have to look at comparative etymology. And I'll cover this real quickly, then we can move on to other aspects of the phenomenon. But what are we dealing with here? Well, in antiquity, there was kind of an understanding, rather, tradition that some people die and they become rephaim. Instead of evolving, they devolve. Other people die and they become they become an Elohim, a god. This entire legend, and this is going to be controversial, but just bear with me, it comes from the Enuma Elish, where in that text it says the ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a god. In other words, there is a disembodied presence. We see this in apparitional theory that has the ability, it's there, it has a constitution to it. And so some of these beings evolved into what were considered to be malakuma, which is where we get the Hebrew word malakim. They became angelic. This is why in the book of Enoch, he became what? An angel, Metatron. This is why when Saul went to the witch of Endor, which, by the way, if you want to reference, it is Women's Divination in Biblical Antiquity by Esther Amori. She said she saw an Elohim coming out of the earth. Why? One, some evolve, others devolve. In their de-evolution, if you will, we have the Rephaim who erected these altars, who are trying to self-replicate. And so that is my little pocket lecture about angelology.
Okay. All right. So it works on two levels that I'm about to tell. Okay. So talked about Alan Greenfield, right?
Awesome.
So going back to Chris Bledsoe, okay? The night before I interviewed him, roughly 12 hours before the interview.
Greenfield or Bledsoe?
I don't know if it Bledsoe. Okay. Well, let me both.
Okay, did I stumble on something? Okay, my bad.
Both. Okay, so I saw just the wings of owls, right? Just flying past, either one or two flying past my window, hunting at night. And, great horned owl, because it was hooting as I was finishing up his book and stopped hooting the moment I closed
Interesting.
it. Okay. So just remember the great horned owl. People who watch my channel know about the great horned owl. It landed on my back fence. I have like 1,000 photos of it. It was there. It's just an owl. Okay. You could argue it's just an owl. So I talked to Alan before his interview, and he's like, he first said there was a weird synchronicity that happened before this interview. And I'm like, well, what was it? He's just like, your last video just was fed to me on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, that's probably just some social media. He's like, that's never happened to me in an interview ever. And I kind of discounted it. But I just started talking about that owl story. And he's just like, funny you mentioned that. About 12 hours before my interview with you, I saw like an owl. And I don't know if it was the first time that he'd ever seen one in person, or it was the first time in a very, very, very long time he'd seen one. But this is kind of the occurrence that, and again, for me, I see that as a very positive kind of omen. But these are the sort of things that seem to occur to people who are starting to delve into it. But they're positive signs. They're not like the signs that Mira got with like the arms rising from his bed and like pinning him down, and him like yelling and his wife not waking up, right? These are kind of more of the just keep going down this path. But anyway, that's part one. The second part too is when you talk about evolution and devolution, right? One of the things that Greenfield talks about is he has these secret chiefs of the third order, what they call like they call it something else. I'm not going to say it in the podcast because it'll sound like I'm like,
Lord of the Rings or something.
Like white and black magic, right? But it sounds even more. But the secret chiefs of the third order are kind of a group of ascended masters, let's call it, that want humanity to expand. But then there's also the Black Lodge, right? Which is discarnate entities that want to keep people down and not.
That's it. Anyway, on what we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Wow. Awesome.
So anyway, that's just we put a pin in that, but there are different ways of looking at this thing from a variety of different perspectives. And he, by the way, Alan Greenfield, does not think that these things are from the stars. He thinks they're from other wares, however you want to take that.
Yeah. No,
So,
I concur. I'm on the same page.
okay, so moving along, you and I'm gonna we have to steer very carefully because
Oh, yeah.
we'll talk about what was said publicly, and then so you
Okay.
were mentioning a Whitley Strieber interview
Correct.
with Nick Pope, and he said something that caught your ear. What did he
Yes.
say?
Well, let me back up and say this real quick, okay? And I'm going to read some notes here, shall I?
Yep, absolutely.
So, all right. There are intersectionalities between phenomena. And that's one of the reasons why myself, Steve Mary, Barry Fitzgerald, some other people perhaps, but mainly us, thankfully, we're on to it now, essentially, I guess. But, anyways, what we were looking at is okay, are we compartmentalizing this phenomenon? Is this a singular
Yep.
intelligence that's masking itself, right? Again, trying to lead us astray. Um, and if it is, right, is it, are aliens ghosts and ghost spirits and all that stuff? And so when we're looking at their abilities and the way they've interacted with our species, this is
Mm-hmm.
from an account by Martinson Larson, who was a spiritualist. And he was in the presence of a medium whose name was M. Desperanze. This
Mm-hmm.
is his notes, okay? While the medium sat in the cabinet, a phantom built itself upon the floor. It built itself upon the floor outside of the cabinet and finally took shape as a female person who moved in and out among the participants. She extended her hand to one of these, and while this individual held her hand, dematerialization set in before the eyes of all. The gentleman then called out, "Now the hand is growing smaller and smaller. Now there is nothing left." At the very end, after the dematerialization, it just showed up in a ball of light and rolled underneath the cabinet. So, a ball of light. We would consider those to be orbs. Believe it or not, not all orbs in parapsychology and hauntings are dust. Barry Taft, the renowned and notable rather parapsychologist, had a haunting in San Pedro, California. Her name was Jackie Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
For guys who, if you want to research this, it's called the most haunted house in America, I believe it was. Barry Conrad and Jeff Wheatcraft. This is when the entity tried to hang Jeff Wheatcraft in the attic. But anyways, it was in this investigation that Dr. Barry Taft and his assistants had cornered a ball of light, just like the one I just mentioned in this seance. And from this corpuscular ball of light hovering in the corner of the room, it went pop, pop, and then boom, an apparition from the waist up emerged from the ball of light. At that point, he said he could hear a few of his assistants faint and they hit the ground immediately, okay, from a ball
Mm-hmm.
of light. Previously, right, the ball of light rolled underneath the cabinet. Now, what we're seeing in ufology are the same balls of light. Matter of fact, Chris Bledsoe, he said this. The ball
Mm-hmm.
of light, the orb, fell down from the trees to where he is, essentially a few feet away, and from that ball of light emerged an entity. Now, these entities, especially with an apparitional theory, they can materialize and dematerialize to the touch. So, in a way, it's almost like it can come in and out of existence, but it can materialize to the point that you can feel the constitution of the very consciousness manifesting. Now, what Nick Pope said that caught my attention is something, and I haven't heard to this day, nobody's talking about it. But Nick Pope, when he was on with Whitley Strieber,
Well, that's
he's
confirmation bias. What he said is not
right,
something people. Yeah, but go ahead.
no, right,
They'll
right.
understand when you. Yeah.
I had to put that preface out there, right, my friend? So now we get into what Whitley Strieber's talking to Nick Pope about. And I know everybody has their reservations about certain researchers. I do too, but let's just go with this for a fleeting moment. Nick Pope says that, yes, I can confirm now that we are in possession of non-HIs, non-human intelligences, which, okay, we've heard that before. Whatever, we knew that.
Mhm.
However, then goes into this. He said, and I can also tell you that these bodies possess interdimensional characteristics. So if that's the case, it's another intersectionality between spiritism, seances, apparitions, right? No wonder we saw them. No wonder we saw them in hauntology. No wonder we're conjuring them in seances. If this model is more of a correct model, then what used to be called apparitional can now be called interdimensional. We just did not understand it. So let's kind of let's collect all of that information and say, okay, now we have interdimensional beings manifesting in seances. Okay, sure. No wonder Albert Bender. What are we really dealing with here? And I fear that specifically within ufology, because we have researchers that are self-limited to one model of this intelligence, they fail to push down the walls and build bridges. When they do, they will stumble upon intelligence that no matter how it's masked itself, apparently the ball of light is a common thematic element. It's found in hauntology, it's found in ufology. Matter of fact, mind you, there is a possession case in the D-Book literature in the 17th century when they're asking the entity inside the person, what do you look like? He said, well, to you, I would look like a white egg.
Wait, to you, I would look like a what?
A white egg.
A white
what?
egg.
Right. I would appear to you as something shaped like a ball of light. So whatever we're dealing with, again, forget the masks. We have to look at the methodologies. I hope this is making sense in the chat, guys. I'm sorry if not. I do want to
Well,
represent the
there's so
research
many
out there.
ideas that I'm sparing you from. I mean,
Right.
they're all each and every one of them is a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole within a rabbit
Of course. Of course.
hole. Right. So I'm
But
trying to be discerning in some sense.
and
I mean, there's one
I
here.
know
Like,
not
literally, I could just pull one off, and they're good
yes.
questions. So, do you know the difference between the jinn and demons? Just that's just simple
Yes.
spelling.
Well, again, we're still dealing with the disability of being to be without being a being. And so through the self-replication of species or self-replication of species, we're looking at consciousness that is collecting itself within one body, possession and pregnancy. Now, if you look at I guess, the motifs within jinn theology and angelology, even demonology, we're looking at a species that does self-replicate. They do allegedly have children, and they do have their own belief systems. Watch this; is going to blow your mind. Because I was talking to an Islamic scholar years ago about this, and it kind of fit. Yes, they can replicate. Okay, fine. Do they have bodies? Not really. Smokeless fire. Okay, is that light? What is that exactly? Moving right along. Oh, they have their own theologies, their own religious traditions. Okay. And finally, when we were on this phone call, I said, sir, it sounds like you're discussing ghosts. They have their own belief systems. They can replicate in the sense of incubi, succubi. They have their own traditions. They have their own language preferences. And so that's where that research leads. But there's another part of that which kind of takes us by the hand and guides us into sorcery, jinn sorcery. Now, with that said, the case study, because I have to tell you this, I was on a show the end of last year, and I did a whole presentation on possession of pregnancy, and it was just that I didn't go into pig trails like I've done tonight. Unfortunately, that's on my part. I have ADHD, my friend. But I
It's
talked
entertaining.
about that.
I'm throwing you in on different. I'm throwing all sorts of quizzes
Okay,
to bet,
cool.
so it's fine.
Well, dealing with this measure of sorcery that's present, ritual magic, in the employing of that in contactees and practitioners, we are using magic. This is going to blow your mind, okay? We're using magic to influence a hidden world,
Mm-hmm.
a world that's present with us, but absent from us, okay? A world that we cannot see, but that often stares into our own eyes. So we use these symbols that are found underneath the eyelids of experiencers. This is Father Sinistrari's research. We're using amulets and symbols that we have been given by them to seemingly influence their world. Now, the case study I had of the remote viewer, when he was astrally projecting and when he got back into his body from underneath the skin subdermally, these beings carved their own amulets into his body. Now, I sent a couple of these the photographic evidence, I should say, in plurality. I sent the photographic evidence I was given to practitioners of every major mystery school. None of them could tell me why these amulets were present, what they meant, and thirdly, this blew my mind too, because it leads me to a profound point here. Thirdly, that none of them could tell me how this even worked. Now, if our amulets within the occult, not ours, I'm speaking practitioners, if their amulets given to them, inherited by these beings, are designed to influence their dimension, whose dimension are they influencing when they employ their rights among us? These aren't our amulets. Who gave them theirs? This is what I mean. This is what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to kick down these walls because apparently, and I've said this before, they're playing by different rules here. And they're playing by different rules because they are playing a different game. And that's my rant.
Are you familiar with brain theory? BRANE.
I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
I think it's also called like bulk universe theory or whatever, but there are a series of different universes, kind of like, in a quantum foam, or maybe not quantum foam, but just like and they're just kind of floating around,
Right.
a higher dimension. And when they bump into each other, some of
Oh,
these
yes, yes, yes.
some of these brains, it's called M brain, so M
Mhm,
dash BRANE theory.
mhm.
They're, you could describe it as portals open, things can come freely, but there may be different laws of physics in each of these brains,
Oh, yeah.
right? Which could explain. Again, I have no idea, but there's so many different theories right now in kind of physics, quantum
Mhm.
physics, right? You think about the double slit experiment where you
Right.
can actually alter the course of the fringe pattern, right? If you
Mhm.
are observing or measuring the electron as it's going to its fringe pattern, there's only one, and it's going to land in one place. But if you don't measure it, you get this distribution, right?
Yeah.
Fringe. So there's some
Well,
aspect of manifestation in all this, but
100%.
I don't think, obviously we obviously don't understand it very well, but whatever's looking in at us might understand it at a much higher level.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. The overlords. And another thing that I must highlight because I have ADHD and I'll forget it and I won't even talk about it the whole show. But when you get into incubi and succubi literature, even in vampirology, demonologists originally believed that this intelligence was sourcing its secretions, harvesting it from men, and planting into women, that it was sourcing its secretions based upon the vitality of the man and on the fertility of the women. But it wasn't until they got a hold of handwritten grimoires penned by practitioners. Somebody on one show said, well, we don't know if that was taken during religious persecution. Yes, we do. I'm not dumb enough to source my own material from stuff that could be discounted like that. Forgive me.
Mhm.
I just have to say that out loud because that's a critique. No, these are rituals penned by practitioners. And wouldn't you know that in the rituals, they needed the same secretions and excretions that the phenomenon was harvesting from men and women, meaning not on the vitality of the man, or not just, and not just on the fertility of the woman. The phenomenon was coordinating, triangulating what it took from experiencers based upon what can and needed to be employed during ritual magic. Hello. And it's Star. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to the field. Whatever we're dealing with is, and I'm getting passionate. Forgive me. I'll calm down. But again, this intersectionality. This is what is called pattern confirming evidence. And in whatever this intelligence is, yes, it is sourcing its secretions. If you look at the scatology and witch era literature,
Mhm.
it mirrors identically to what we're seeing in the UFO abduction phenomenon. And
Now,
that is terrifying.
I think you've alluded to this before, but I'll ask it. You can bypass it if you want, but it
Well,
just says I can't remember. Does Nathaniel believe Bledsoe is in contact with demons or angels?
to my knowledge, I haven't said he's in contact with either. To my knowledge, what I've suggested is yes. If we look at the behavioral patterns and the methodologies, yes, coming out of a ball of light, sure, we've seen that before. We've seen it before again in hauntology, possession cases, the whole gamut. Um, I have no ill will or anything towards Bledsoe. He seems like a great guy, a great family. I know things that I can't talk about with respect to the Vatican and the way they work. Um, but as with every validated experiencer that the government sends officials to talk to, sure, you're only as useful as if you can contact them for us. And unfortunately, I would hate for him to be treated like that by the government and by the Vatican. But to answer the question, I took a long story short, I don't know what he's in contact with. All I have are modalities of the phenomenon. And if Tyler D, as is professed, if Tyler D told him we can move into the next, I'm going to quote, we can move into the next phase. You can now go into churches and lay hands on people and heal them. Time out. Time out. What is an alien doing preaching doctrine?
Yeah, what do you make of what's his name? I know he's referred to as Tyler D, but it's
Mhm.
Tim Taylor is his name. It's out there. It's out,
Yeah.
so we can say
Yeah,
it.
I got that messed up the last time I got, yeah.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
No, you did it. You handled it well because you wouldn't accidentally make the mistake if you called him Tyler D.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
So what do you
Um,
make of Tim? Yeah.
okay. Let me go back and again,
Well, first of all, just describe who Tim Taylor is very quickly so that people
he's
who
one of the
don't
leading,
know.
he's one of our leading scientists who was a part of what once was the Invisible College. And since Diana Walsh Pasuka has emerged with her books and with her lectures and podcasts, he's starting to again, he's emerging and he's doing lectures on not really that same genre of research. But I'm going to tell you who he is. I'm going to tell you what I have an issue with. Tim Taylor is allegedly going into undisclosed locations in New Mexico, and he is building altars. And this would be a red flag for anyone who's followed this podcast tonight. And he believes, and he is also proven, that because of the rituals the altars built, because of his behavior modification, because of his dietary modifications,
Mm-hmm.
that the intelligence is now giving him, imparting technology, meta materials. Now, I
And
wonder,
downloads, particularly on like
downloads. Yeah,
like medical instrument technology, biotechnology, that sort of stuff.
right.
And he has patents. He's had companies
Correct.
that have gone public, and by the way, he has, as far as I know, no formal scientific or
No.
academic training. Like he's not like a PhD. He's just some guy
Right.
that worked for NASA. Right.
Correct. It's the same behavioral pattern Parsons had and the others. Now, to a degree, let me say this real quick. We, to our
Alleged,
knowledge,
and
yeah,
let me be
yeah,
clear. Allegedly, right? Because
allegedly, right,
we're assuming that Tim Taylor is everything that he says he is,
correct,
right? And in the intelligence community, that can be a canard. In fact, there
absolutely.
was somebody I interviewed last week as well. His name's Don Ecker, a
Hmm.
former military intelligence enlisted guy in Vietnam. He said that the um, UFO community is a place where they send military intelligence and
Hmm.
intelligence folks to learn how to apply their craft. It's like a training ground for them. So just,
Right, right.
but anyway,
So
go ahead.
yeah,
Continue with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for the caveat, my friend. So we're okay. Again, the problem we're having right now is that we think the encounter and the experience with this intelligence begins when it physically manifests to us. That is a fallacy. That is a fallacy. Let me give you step by step. Okay. When the practitioner in antiquity decides to go out, and I'm going to give you this case study. Okay. We're going to compare notes.
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere, right? Again, the primordial man, instead of making the idol in his image, he's being made in the image of the idol. The intelligence go out, collect stones. What kind of stones? Uncut by human hands. Where do you want them? I want you to put them at a particular portal to where my presence is within the proximity of. And I want you to do this underneath the cosmology of stars. Okay. From the point of obedience, that is when the experience is occurring. When that individual begins to obey and creates that altar, at that moment, you've behaved, you're modeling for that intelligence. And the lie that we have been fed, and that the Collins elite even discovered in their research, was that by the time the practitioners did everything the phenomenon wanted them to do, little did they know that they believed, again, this is, I'm going to give you a phrase in right. So I'm going to give you a phrase that the Collins elite said, okay, in their Collins report, that the practitioner is allowed to believe they are in control.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time they go through various stages of conjuring, then they realized, wait a minute, I'm the one being conjured the entire time. And so the dealing with Bledsoe, with what was that comment again? Because I want to address it. I mean, it's a,
This one.
yes. For instance, now, if we're going to deal with that, there is, unless you get into the Vatican, which even then, some of what I've been hearing coming out of their archives is no. Angels, to my knowledge, do not fly craft. They don't come out of balls of light. They were always seen as humans. Now, take it for what it's worth. But I would suggest again that we do not have angels cutting into canines and letting them bleed out and then suddenly healing them. Never, never. Now, I know that because I study angelology and demonology. What this appears to be, again, now, if you get into, especially antiquity, there was what's called the false divine. Okay, in the false divine is something that appears as a divine entity. Okay, and it does that. It'll heal. It'll manifest and perform all these miracles. But at the end of the day, it's creating its own clergy. And what concerns me, again, I'm not going to say, okay, yeah, it's demons or angels or none of that. I'm giving you some of the evidence. I would suggest to everyone that when you're looking at the phenomenon creating prophets out of people, there's a reason. If Tyler D phoned him up one day and said, listen, we need to move into a new phase. What's that phase? Go in, now, mind you, it's going to blow your mind. Go into churches and lay hands on somebody. Did you know that in biblical antiquity, the rite of laying on of hands was an act of exorcism? And now we're in demonology. See, if the phenomenon would have groomed the late Michael Heiser, like it's trying to groom some of these experiencers, it would immediately been rejected because they would have noticed, okay, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Because watch this, if the pastor in that church is not preaching something that these beings are wanting Bledsoe to, apparently, now we have a conflict of interest and we're right back in biblical antiquity. I don't want that to be the case, so I'm reserving it. I don't know what he's in contact with. All I know are the examples we've been given in other fields of research. It's no different. His experiences are no different. The problem is we've compartmentalized it. And I guess I'll stop talking. I don't want to,
Somebody, I'm going to throw you another curve. I'm going to throw you another curveball, but it's more akin to the Jen comment. Somebody way back was asking questions about the Fae and if they're related to any of this. You could probably throw in cryptids and things like that, because in many cases, particularly with, I think I just did an interview about Bigfoot, right? Sometimes orbs appear at the same time and things, where does that all fit into this cosmology?
Well, I believe it's a method of travel. It's a vehicle for them. I've always believed that. And I also believe that one of the reasons the powers that be changed it from UFO to UAP is because some of the images they have on record look to be massive, giant orbs. Now, what's also interesting is if you look at the orb in literature prior to what we know as ufology, the orb was represented as a soul or consciousness. And this leads into other research I've been doing where are these, what are they? Are we dealing with conscious beings? I say that because my brother years ago was in charge. You're welcome, Anthony. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. But, and I say that humbly, I don't know what's going on with the guy. I'm just I'm reading the tea leaves here. But so my brother was a part of a group that were placing thousands of cameras and trees on light posts in a particular part of our country, and thousands of them. And so he would get the footage. He'd look at the footage and kind of publish it, edit it, and all that stuff, and try to get it out to people and their group. Well, one video that he was allowed to show me was of something with a capital S, captured by one of their cameras, and it manifested from the left side, and then as it's traveling, you see how it's contorting itself, and then by the time it went from the far left to the far right, the entity that manifested here looked nothing like what they captured at the end of the video. By the time it was done, it had contorted itself into the image of a plane. And so their conclusion was, this is an entity, this is a being that, again, evolving, boom, stage 1, stage 2, according to our awareness of it. And anyways, yeah, so I think that's fascinating. But getting back to this understanding of, okay, why is it that the phenomenon is grooming practitioners? It does concern me because what it's trying to do, and you'll see this in the way they talk, okay? Not all of them. And I'm sure they're all good people. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that there's a moment when there is a cult-like following, and in order to contact them, you have to go through the mediator. Because, again, we know that. And and I'm telling you, somebody said, yes, the phenomenon wants to be worshipped. Yes, they do. Absolutely. That's there's no argument there. But more than that, it seems like they're creating their own profits. Scary stuff.
Now, do you see this phenomena as all one thing, or do you think there are different kinds of phenomena or
Hmm.
different beings within the phenomena? Because I think you see it as one broad thing to some extent, but are there different aspects of
Yeah.
one broad thing, like several broad things
Yes.
that
Well,
implement these programs?
and that's a good word for it. Programs. Yes, sir. So the model I'm operating off of, and I think others that I'm in touch with, is that the singular intelligence that has been evolving with us, co-evolving, evolving according to our awareness of it, and evolving in order to evade. How does it evade? It diversifies its identity. I'm a ghost. I'm an alien. I'm a demon, right? Oh, I'm ETH, whatever you want to call it. The problem with this is as it self replicates, it spews out propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason, no, I hope people pick this up. The reason it denominates and diversifies its identity is because with the mask, and I suggested this earlier in the show, with the mask, there is accompanied rules. And it follows those rules to a certain degree. And we are led to believe, okay, thank God, it's a ghost, it's a demon. Those are the rules. Why? Because that's the mask it's wearing. Up until you make eye contact with it, up until another program supersedes the one it's operating in. And then you see what's been possessing and inhabiting that mask transcend that microcosm. And now you're looking at an entity where it's like, okay, the reason I don't know the rules you play by is because the only incarnations I am familiar with are masks. That's why Father Sinistrarian of Amino, right? Here's holy water, here's amulets. Worked on the mask until he encountered an entity, did not work on him. That's why your practitioners of magic, high magic, right? Oh, these are ascended masters, or these are some similar incarnation. And then, okay, and you go out there and you do what you're supposed to do, and all of a sudden now you're in the presence of the proto intelligence, and you cannot control that. And that's what the Collins Elite was saying, was that by the time you are aware of what's going on, now the practitioner's thinking, so how did this all begin? Oh, I was in bed one night. I had a dream. That's when the experience occurred. And this gets back to, again, the skull experiment where, and I
Mm-hmm.
did a show, What Lurks Beneath, and I had someone in the field. Well, forgive me, but she misquote, she quoted me right, but she misunderstood what I was saying. You know, but these individuals in the 90s were trying to collect data regarding the afterlife and people on the other side. Okay. They were taught how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
By who? I don't know. Let's just go with it. And so here they are performing seances. In the middle of the seance appears a gray. It's blue. It's a blue image, but it's appearing to them. Bulbous eyes, the same facial structure, and it's
Mr.
staring
Blue,
at
right?
them.
They called it
Mr.
Mr. Blue.
Blue. Let me put this into perspective for everyone.
And by the way, they have a picture of this entity. Like if you watch
Yes,
my Steve Mira episode, I found it. It's out there. Actually, it's not even
100%.
a picture; it's a video of this thing.
Correct.
But
So
sorry,
Mr.
keep
Blue
going.
shows up. No, again, what we're dealing, I'm telling you, this is nuts, but it's true. Okay, that would be the equivalent of me telling you, Sean, your dear Aunt Edna. I always use that. Let's pick out another name. Your Uncle Tim, Uncle Tim Taylor. I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, he's deceased and he's discarnate. He's on the other side, and he has a 555 number for you to call him. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so of course you get on the phone, you dial that number, and all of a sudden some other species picks up the other end of the phone. Now, logically, I would suggest they're the ones that gave you the number. Logically.
Right.
which makes me question it again. Okay, yes, okay, yeah, we're going to go conjure, we're going to go talk to the deceased loved ones. And then the entire time they're there, they're not realizing that on the other side of the two-sided mirror, there is an intelligence that offer the thought, that put the feet in front of each other, that scheduled a time at a certain place, got them together. And now, guess what? You're not the conjurer, you're the ones being conjured. And by the way, if and when that proto intelligence on the other line, who authored the amulets in antiquity, authored, right, the ritual of Teraphim, when that steps in, and it did, all bets are off. And so that's why, as a researcher, I'm to the point now where I'm like, okay, when does the experience begin? When they were manifesting to our senses? Mm-mm. It's beginning prior to. And I think that that research needs to be presented.
So, what's the next step in your research? What are you exploring right now? Don't say too much because I don't want to steal your thunder for a recorded
No,
interview in the coming
I
weeks.
oh yeah, we're gonna introduce. Wow, it's gonna be interesting. So I'm looking at, and I'm trademarking this only because for a long time I lacked the vocabulary. You know, I had no, I knew I was researching something, I just didn't know what. And so, based upon the pattern confirming evidence I've collected, I'm introducing necronetics. And necronetics is what I believe to be their self replication method. And it is a
Mm.
combination of ritual magic, necromancy, and genetics. It's not an accident, my friend, that the consciousness of apparitions that were appearing to women were creating bodies that looked identical to them. So you could have copies of the same body and then one intelligence controlling all of them. So it's going to be necronetics. And then I do want to go to, I don't know if I can, it's dangerous, but there are portals that these practitioners visited in antiquity. They're located in northern Syria. Those were
Mm.
where the first practitioners were building altars to Rephi. If I can get there and hopefully perform some experiments along with people that I just recently met, maybe we can get insights. Because believe it or not, this is what's fascinating as well. I had no idea that what I was researching was the same thing Brian Allen, Barry Fitzgerald, and Steve Merrill were researching. Completely opposite ends of the field, and yet here we are.
There's again. I just talked to Alan Greenfield and I also talked to
Mhm.
Olav Phillips. The portal that Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, right, of
Right.
Scientology fame, allegedly opened in February, I think, of 1946,
Mhm.
is still open.
Oh, it is, and that's what the Collins elite realized was like, okay. I mean, all of these individuals knew each other, even Kenneth Arnold, L. Ron
Hmm.
Hubbard, Mr. Goddard, if you will. And yes, Jack Parsons and Crowley both agreed there were portals opened. You know, let me say this. It's 10:45. The shortest horror story ever written is
By the way,
this.
we still have 25
Mhm.
minutes, so
Okay,
we're
cool,
ending at
cool.
8:10 or my time,
Okay.
11:10 your time.
So the shortest horror story ever written is that the last man on earth was alone in his house, and then there came a knock at the door. When we are looking at these case studies from antiquity to modernity, it is inescapable that there is a form of life, a species out there that is courting our human condition, despite despite our wantedness, despite our desire to conform it to some kind of nuts and bolts physical attachment.
Hmm.
No. Matter of fact, guys, again, it wasn't NASA sending a probe out into the shivering abyss. No. Where did it originate? And so this is why when people say, okay, are they demons or are they aliens? I would hypothesize for us all that if we're looking at an intelligence that has been present with and absent from, co-evolving, evolving according to our awareness, and then as it's evolving in order to evade, to the point where it has diversified its identity, allowing, I mean, I'm building a case here, allowing us to believe in falsified rules in which when we engage it at any point of its choosing, what do we call that? Interdimensional bodies manifesting to the touch, and then just what do we call that?
Well, and what does that
It's
even mean?
insane.
What does
I
interdimensional
know.
even mean? Right? Does it mean five, I don't know, four physical dimensions, seven physical
Right.
dimensions? Does it mean, like we talked
Mm,
about with the brain theory and brain theory, right?
mm,
Is it just another universe that these things are coming out of? Is it
mhm,
kind of an overlay, the principle of superposition that you see in quantum mechanics? That there's just
mhm.
these entities that are just vibrating at either much higher or much lower frequencies, such that we
Right.
can't see them as readily. I mean, they're interdimensional can mean any
A
number of
host of
different
things.
things,
Correct.
right?
And one of those possibilities being exactly what we know in hauntology. Again, manifesting through balls of light. Well, where have we heard that? How are they manifesting? Okay, you can touch them. Okay, and if this is a singular intelligence, no wonder they show up in the same ways. And it's this, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and to me, that's the model I'm currently working off of. But whatever we're dealing with, to my knowledge, I've never known a demon to have to perform sorcery. This is why, whatever we're dealing with that case study, right, where the subdermal scarifications of amulets, the reason it transcended our known occult symbolism is because it's not ours. And they're using this at like technology. Whatever they are, again, this is not, we've got to think again, we have to grow outside of the dogmatism we inherited. Horns and hooves, horns and hooves. What if there was something wearing that? Something more alien than the extraterrestrial, and something more demonic than the horns and hooves we currently contemplate. Because whatever that is, that's what I believe we're looking at. Man, I've pig trailed, man. I apologize. I'm everywhere tonight, but I always love being
It's
on
all
with you,
right.
man. You get me to go everywhere, and it's like I can't shut up.
Yeah, but this is stuff a lot like there's some overlap to what we talked before, but that was the intent, right? The intent
Mhm.
was to have 100% overlap, but I'm thinking we're getting 60% overlap and 40% new stuff, but it's not the new stuff that you're going to talk about when we
No.
sit down and have a pre-recorded interview with
Well,
sometime soon. But
oh, it's gonna be a
so
blast. We
it's
got
so it's
20
so it's good.
minutes
It's good.
or
Like
30
people who
minutes. Mhm.
whatever, yeah, whatever. It's probably longer than that, but
Well, oh, it's gonna be a blast. So check this out. So whatever we're dealing with, again, there is a learning matrix being employed. When and this took me a while to kind of get a grasp of, because poring over copious amounts of case studies over and over again, some from other researchers and others of my own, there's more going on than just, okay, it's appearing to me as someone I know. No, there are rules, characteristics, behavioral patterns attached to that mask. And mind you, this is going to blow your mind too. While that mask is being employed, the intelligence behind it is observing and learning.
mm-hmm.
And so, as we are experiencing, we ourselves are being experienced. The learning matrix evolving. And this is fascinating. That's what happened with that experiencer I talked to and worked with, where the phenomenon didn't know what to do because somewhere the program failed. I can't, what am I doing here? I've got to look. I've got to set, I have got to go through her consciousness and pick out the remnants. It makes no sense, but yeah. So the reason why we don't know the rules it plays by is because it keeps diversifying itself. I'm Sean. No, I'm Nathaniel.
We are one.
And we are one.
Now,
Fascinating stuff, man.
you said you had some experiences throughout the course of your life. Have you had anything
Mhm.
recent that is worth talking about?
Um, well, it's strange. I mean, it was paranormal because when I went to England and
So this
obviously
happened in.
phenomenal time
Hold on, hold
in
on, hold on.
England.
This
Yeah,
happened in. Okay, so this is new. Have you
right.
told anybody this story yet? This is okay because we can.
No,
This is
no.
wasn't. This
But it's
wasn't what you
not
were intending to talk about
right. But it's
on
not
our
like, okay,
next episode.
it's not, yeah, it's not like creep or anything. But when I was there, they told me, Steve told me and Jackie, they both told me that they had been experiencing strange paranormal activity. Just, it's not like, oh my God, somebody cut in front of me on the highway or, I'm not being pushed off the stairs, but just stuff that little things that, like that wasn't supposed to happen. And so
Hmm.
they took me out to dinner. It was amazing time. I had the time of my life with them. But anyways, the restaurant that we went to was they kind of catered, and so they catered a lot of pastry dishes. And so I love pastries, and so I'm fat, and so I'm like, you know what, I want a pastry. And they're like, we'll go ahead and get you a pastry. So they were, they offered, they purchased me a pastry. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna go back to the hotel and I'm gonna eat this. And I was excited. So I go back to the headquarters and we do a podcast. Well, as I'm talking to them, I have it in my hand. Okay. I've never had this happen in my life. As I'm talking to them, the pastry itself, not the box, the pastry itself flies out of the box, boom, right on the floor. And I'm just looking, I was shocked. And they're all laughing. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like what is going on? And that's when they were like, yeah, it's stuff like that. So that's happened. But that's been the latest encounter. Strange.
Did they tell you what they thought it was? Like, was I mean, this was at his
Just a
headquarters.
sign. Just a sign. Yeah, just a sign, man. Um,
A
I
sign
imagine.
what that you're on the wrong track or you're on the right track.
No, no. Well, just I think it was a sign that yeah, you're here. We know. I mean, honestly, the very first night I was in the hotel, this is the first time I'm talking about it as well. I was laying in bed and I felt this absolute a dread come over me. It was spiritual. And that's what I was afraid
Hmm.
of. I talked to my dad about it before I left is presenting this information. Forget the physical forces, the gatekeepers or hecklers. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of retaliation.
Have you ever been to
So
Skinwalker Ranch, by the way, or on the outskirts
I
of it?
haven't. I haven't. I would love to though. I would love to
So,
go.
if you ever decide to go there, I mean, unless Brandon Fugel lets you on. By the way, I didn't. I've never been
Hmm.
on the ranch, but there's
Hmm.
a property that's adjacent to it that has access to the mesa. Okay, because the mesa
Okay.
is not owned by just the ranch. It's parceled up by a different number of different places. But regardless, there's a place called UFO Valley Tours. They couldn't call themselves
Hmm.
Skinwalker or anything because Brandon Fugel's company is very litigious. So but you can go
Hmm.
there and you can spend a night. It's very cheap, probably
I
less.
would do it. I would do it. I'm reading some of the comments. Thank you guys for tuning in. I saw a lot of people, Kayla, Anthony. If I could go through here, Miss Tessa Marie, always a pleasure to see you in the chats. I think my buddy George Sanqui was here too, and I'm going to be on a show with him in a while. We're going to have a blast. I think it was in there somewhere, but yeah. So yeah, whatever we're dealing with, man, it's like I said, if it's been here since the dawning first breaths of recorded history, and we still don't know it, there's only one reason. It's as it's replicating, it's diversifying its identity.
It's co-evolving with us, probably.
Right. Absolutely. I'm pretty sure he was in here. Anyways, I'm sorry. Yeah. What do you want me to finish with, brother? Anything in
Well,
particular?
we still have 14 minutes, so why don't we do
Oh, okay.
this?
Yeah. Okay.
We'll take some questions
Okay.
from because I haven't done that. I think we have enough time to do that. And then about
Okay.
5 minutes before the end, we'll ask you for kind of your final thoughts,
Okay.
new avenues for research and stuff like that. So, folks, put your questions down in the comments section, and we'll try to get to them as many as possible. And it feels to me like there's kind of a delay,
Okay.
so they don't get there right away.
Okay.
But uh, I think I got some of the questions already that were way back when. I've kind of truncated some of them. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that a lot of these are just.
Pretty sure I
Let's
saw
see.
George in there.
All right, you covered the difference between the jinn and demons.
Hmm.
Let's see if there's anything else in here. Yeah, I don't see. Oh, let's see. No. Again, a lot of these things are framed as just kind of okay. I think here we go. Here we go. Okay. All right. What's the best weapon to battle? I won't say. I always. I'm like it's the Catholic inside me that doesn't like to say the word. But
Hmm.
what's the best way to battle this phenomenon? Is it wrong for me to not fear them? Is it possible to become a
Don't fear him.
Constantine type character? I guess that's like
No.
Constantine from DC
Yeah.
Comics.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't fear them. I wouldn't fear them. A lot of these beings feed on fear, so it'd only be empowering them. Um, and I do not, and this is going to sound strange, but I do not advise people to research what I'm doing. I'm leveraging my own life when I do this stuff.
Mm.
That's why I'm not in a relationship. That's why I'm not too close to too many people. Because last thing I want is a phone call in the middle of the night. Like, what's going on? You know what I mean?
Funny you say that. Say that you're familiar. You definitely have to be familiar with the Zohar.
Zohar?
Zohar. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Zohar. Zohar. Apparently, what they tell, I guess,
Hmm.
Talmudic scholars or whatever, Jewish men, is that you're not supposed to touch that stuff until
Yeah.
you've
A
been
certain
married,
point.
had a family, and are grounded in reality. Because apparently, there's an insane asylum or a mental
Yeah.
institution. I guess they don't call them asylums anymore, where
Hmm.
people who've delved too far into the Zohar have gone crazy. So
Right.
what do you make of that? So you were talking about being
Um,
unattached, but there's that kind of
yeah.
counter narrative. It could be just two sides of the same coin. But how do you navigate those things?
Well, I think that I'll tell you what I was told when I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
I was, and this is weird, I was told that not, they didn't say it in the same words I'm going to use, but essentially I would be doing what I'm doing. In that at the age of 50, I either will die or they will try to take me out. And so that's why I believe that researchers like myself and others, this stuff is not just okay, I have an interest in it. This is not a hobby or, a literary pilgrimage. And, no, I mean, this is very real. When I'm reading case studies, at first, early on in my research, I thought I was looking at a painting. I was looking at the painter. I was just looking right at what he was using to paint. And
Mm-hmm.
so essentially what I'm saying is, yes, you do come in contact with this intelligence. And if this isn't your calling or if this isn't what you're supposed to be doing, you know, you won't last. You'll suffer consequences, heavy consequences.
There will be
And
signs. There will be signs.
right, correct, correct. Unfortunately, that's true.
And apparently, if you're kind of going into the right track, there will also be
Hmm.
signs.
Yes, you'll be threatened. Dr. Carla Turner was threatened. Barbara Bartholomew was threatened.
No, you might even be
John.
encouraged. You might even be
Oh yeah.
encouraged.
Correct.
Yeah. All right,
Yes,
here's
sir.
here's another question. So humans perform rituals to communicate or transcend. Is it believed or known if beings/demons also perform their own kind of rituals, or are rituals prayers
We touched on that.
specifically a
Yeah.
human thing? Yeah, we definitely touched on that, but you can repeat. You know,
Well,
how
one
you
of the
getting the thumbs? How you getting the thumbs to appear on your screen?
I think I have a setting up or something. I did that on a show
Okay.
one time. They're like, "What the heck's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know." I conjured a thumbs up. But I think again, at first blush, and according to the old, antiquated, dogmatic model of demonology, we were performing rituals to influence them.
Mm,
In those rituals, nuances, amulets, phrasings that they gave us to influence them. Now, the model I've just introduced tonight is that if their magic transcends ours and we're using our magic to influence them, then there's another dimension. There's another dimension of darkness that they're also trying to influence by performing their own rituals. And if that's true, then, which I hope it isn't, if that's true, then yes, some of these beings do perform their own rites.
Is there a chance in terms of a power dynamic they're just as powerful,
Mhm.
or we're just as powerful as they are? It just shows differently in
I
their
don't know.
realm of existence than ours.
Mhm,
Because there are times if you take like I don't know if it's Colaris or
mhm,
the incident in Brazil, Virginia, right? When you take that
mhm.
there, and this is often in many encounters with non-human intelligences, where people who are contactees, abductees, experiencers will kind of get a message to the effect of you don't realize how powerful you really are.
Yes, 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 yeah, grooming again, grooming the human condition.
Grooming.
Um, it's really what it is. How do I become powerful? Well, do what I want. Do what I want you to do. And I do believe that plays a role into it, and I believe that consciousness is it's far deeper than we can imagine. That's
Hmm.
why I believe that in some instances, specifically with the entity I encountered, the succubus, where she was present both in my nightmare and when I woke up. And so the idea, and this is what we're still doing, even with the split experiment, are they manifesting to us or are they manifesting through us? And this is why I put up on my Instagram. It's possible that consciousness is not the driver. Consciousness is the vehicle. That there are some things that are born of belief.
Hmm.
And that would play into why that entity is monitoring. What do you believe? Another reference, and dare I say it, who do men say that I am? Or in Paul's gospel, if another Jesus comes to you. What do you mean? I have betrothed you to one, and there's yet another that's going to come. So again, we're dealing with intelligence that's seeking to become incarnate.
Okay. Here's the next question from
Hmm.
Dean C. Are artificial intelligence accelerationists making the problem of negative
Yes,
multidimensionals worse?
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can intuit yes.
The leading AI researcher right now that is creating, I should say, multi-dimensional computers. His name is Jordy Rose, and he does a lecture on that and talks about the emergence of AI. And I can say this: I had a case one time where an entity had called the husband, called his cell phone. He told me when I went to the investigation, he said I was like washing the dishes or something after dinner, or preparing one of the two, preparing before dinner or washing after. But he told me that his cell phone rang, and he said I saw it light up, I heard it ring, and whatever this thing was opened it and pressed speakerphone and began to talk to him. So yes, short answer, yes.
Yeah, it's easier to spread lies and deceit and do all sorts of crazy things. So,
Hmm.
okay, this is a personal question. You don't have to answer this.
Okay,
No, that's not the right
right.
one. Hold on. Here we go.
I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. I do.
Folks are listening on the radio. It's just the question is, do you believe in God?
Right. Yes, I do believe in a higher power, and even though there are times when these case studies contradict my understanding, for instance, Ted Rice's was difficult for me to swallow.
All right, this is same. I mean, you started answering it. What
I
do you think God is? Yeah.
don't want to get into theology because a lot of people will get salvific, and if my model doesn't agree with someone else's model, then they start trashing my research, and it's just I don't know. I don't. You can. I'll tell you maybe in an email or something, but yeah. I mean, whatever we're dealing with in terms of apparitions, it does appear to be remnants of the Atreus epic. Excuse me. You know what I mean? Like the ghost of a man. What is made from the flesh of a god? This is what the difference was, right? Elohim, Rephaim. What are we dealing with? It is consciousness. No wonder they know about the afterlife. No wonder they know who died and what clothes they died in. That is where they are.
All right, we're at we got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
So, what should folks do if this is indeed the correct model of reality or the closest model of reality that we have? How should people proceed in their day to day?
Just live life normally. Don't worry about it unless you have encounters or experiences. Uh, yeah, go to bed at night. Watch Frasier like I do. You know, watch Seinfeld. Just relax. Do your thing. You know, none of what I'm doing right now is, you know, again, my intention is not to keep you up at night. This is what I like to do. This is the research I'm doing. And I'm thankful that people like you, Sean, my friend, have me on their shows so I can at least get people to discuss this in a different manner.
All right, I want to ask you another question. Still got time, but I kind of raised a tantalizing question and I didn't ask it. What is
Okay.
the Zohar, and like
Uh,
why might it drive people crazy by going into it
Ju-
unprepared?
well, Kabbalah is again. That's not really the Zohar in and of itself is not what they're talking about. It's the secrets, the Sefer Yetzirah, the secrets that these practitioners used, and they were. I mean, you're talking about Jewish magic here, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
Jewish mysticism, where there are laws that this secondary universe uses, levers you can pull. It's no different than
By
when
the way, I'm smiling
Crowley,
because I
the
just saw
Zohan,
this.
absolutely. Nobody messes with the Zohan.
Yeah, every
By
time
the
they say
way,
Zohar,
oh
I
my God, yeah.
giggle that comes up.
Yeah, who else? Who's better than Adam Sandler? I heard through the grapevine that I think he's either recreating, I think it's Happy Gilmore. That
Oh my god.
can you
I
imagine?
remember him most for his "Welcome to Worcester." That'll be 25
Oh yeah,
cents. All
he's incredible. What a legend. But
right, anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Finish your thought.
no,
Sorry.
you're good, man. So yeah, so I'm not again. I was accused. Okay, nobody wants to what is it? Collaborate with Nathaniel because he thinks he's always right. Well, no, I do have a confidence regarding my pattern confirming research. I think that these case studies, you know, they happened, they existed. You know, ignoring them doesn't mean they didn't occur. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that at least the evidence I'm presenting, if anything, will add value to the pilgrimage into the mystery and majesty of this phenomenon. And it is for that reason, you know, I came on here and, you know, you don't, not you, but speaking generally, you know, people don't have to agree with everything I say, but look it up. Look it up. Yes, Mr. Blue did appear twice. I mean, we're dealing with
It's
entities
on
that
video.
literally, I read it. Yeah,
It's on
brother,
video. Okay.
they built themselves from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
What? Now maybe we're not dealing with apparitional theory. Maybe it's interdimensional theory we're actually looking at.
All right, brother. It's always a
All
pleasure
right,
talking
man.
to you, and I look forward to seeing you later
Absolutely,
later
brother.
next month, I think. So I
All
will
right.
talk to you
God bless
soon.
you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Thank you for
everyone.
tuning
It's
in.
been amazing.